Hello, everyone, and welcome to another video here on the Sports Daily Media Network YouTube channel. I'm your host, Sean Vowells. I've got Joe Meade with me, and tonight is the Midwest Region Breakdown. Please watch the other ones if you haven't already. We've done these for all four regions, break down the initial matchups. We will, at least Thursday and Friday, get something out there when it comes to recapping the action. But Joe, this is your region. Michigan's the number one seed. They did fall to number three overall. At really doesn't matter as long as you weren't number four. You couldn't be on the same side of the bracket as number one. But Michigan is here. How do you like the initial draw for the Wolverines?
I don't think it's a terrible draw at all. I think, Arizona probably had one of the more favorable draws a one seed's had, but I certainly would be complaining more if I was a Duke or Florida fan. Getting into Michigan here, Sean, kind of, I'd say limping, similar to some other teams, so not indifferent from a lot of others. Not making an excuse for Michigan is what I'm trying to muster out of my mouth. Uh, not so great performances, but you do have to remember those were three tournament teams. Two, I think, are top 15 to 20 teams in the nation. Certainly, Purdue could be penciled as a top 5 to 10 team when they play at their full potential.
And the third
Uh,
team, Joe, is playing like one of those other teams right now.
yep, exactly. So I look at that shot and say Michigan should not have much concern to get out of this first weekend. Certainly hope there's not much concern out of this first game. I think the big question you'll have in the first game is how long Jackson Lendenborg has to play. Did sprain his ankle late in that Purdue game. He is slotted to go, low ankle sprain. Do hope, just for tournament's sake and as a Michigan fan, that is not a serious thing. And frankly, I'll put to you this way, Sean. If Michigan's struggling with it, looks like going to be the Howard Bison, barring any miracles by UMBC, that Michigan should be advancing to that second round game where they will play the winner of Georgia and St. Louis. Josh Schertz, first year at St. Louis, I think one of the more impressive first year coaching jobs, certainly outside of a big budget school like a UVA, for example, not to take anything away from Virginia. But Sean, this Georgia St. Louis game is a hard game to pick for a lot of people. What do you think is going to be the deciding factor in this game?
The thing is, Joe, is that Georgia's been very up and down this year, and I think you can say that pretty confidently of all like the upper middle class of the SEC, right? Clearly, they have enough good wins to get to this tournament. Clearly, they've shown a few times that they're good enough to win, but just some really puzzling performances from Georgia this year. They did just beat Alabama like 2 weeks ago, who's below them on the bracket here and potential Sweet 16 matchup. But I just trust Georgia a little bit more than St. Louis. The Billikens are 4-4 in their last eight. They haven't lost to like any terrible teams, but you're talking about some teams, the better teams in the A10 that they lost to are Dayton twice, who are 80th in Ken Palm. George Mason's around 90th. So, like, they're losing on the road to teams that are much, much worse than Georgia. This one's not in St. Louis. So, I think Georgia wins, but I don't know if, like, you're feeling good about either team having a good chance to beat Michigan if when whoever gets through. Like I think it's a good draw for the Wolverines to get to the Sweet 16 and maybe even one step further, Joe, because of the four in the five here. The 5-12 is Texas Tech against Akron. John Gross and the Zips win the MAC tournament for the third straight year. Texas Tech, really good year. A little bit rocky down the stretch because JT Toppin is out, but with Christian Anderson and Donovan Atwell, they're still at least a little bit formidable. So, are you going with the Zips here to pull off the upset, or do the Red Raiders get the job done?
I think the Red Raiders get the job done. I think Greg McCaslin, I know you and Mike are big fans of his. I'm slowly becoming a bigger fan. Hopefully, I don't retract that because what happened, that would be my Michigan Wolverines get eliminated
Yeah,
by him. But I do think it's a very real threat. I think Christian Anderson's been phenomenal. I think Donovan Atwell's really stepped up since that JT Toppin injury. And I think there is pretty good depth on this team. I think McCaslin teams are very sound fundamentally. And Sean, I think they had one of the more impressive outings against Florida last year. You could say that probably about UConn too, so I'm not trying to minimize it, but they're really 2 minutes away from going to the Final Four. And I think with a team probably better than this one, but my take is this team's going to overperform. And John Gross is no stranger to upsets in the first round. He did it to my Michigan Wolverines 14 years ago as the Ohio Bobcats head coach, which probably landed him that Illinois job. But I just don't think this is the matchup for Akron to do it. I think kind of like you with Hawaii, I wanted to pick it, but I don't see it happening in this matchup. I think Texas Tech's 3-point shooting and just seriousness on the boards and on defense. Don't see this Akron getting out to a big lead, and frankly, I think Texas Tech their best bet is to get rid of him early.
Yeah, and I don't know if Akron has the offensive sustainability to continue to score at the rate that they're going to need to, even if Texas Tech has a bad shooting day, because depth has been their problem this year, and they've sort of been forced to figure it out on the fly. They have lost three in a row coming into the tournament, Joe, but Chris Anderson wasn't 100%, and they ended up not really playing him a lot in that second half against Iowa State, where they lost by a lot. But they've lost to TCU, BYU, and Iowa State in the last three. Like, those are three solid teams, so I think they get the job done here. I think Akron is just like a good MAC team. Like, I don't know if they have anything that can barring like a 3-point barrage, which I don't really think that they have on the. They are pretty good at threes, 14th in the country, 64th in 3-point rate. You'd have to think against a power conference team with more size, maybe that rate goes up. So maybe they just let it fly and see what happens. And if you make a bunch early, you find yourself in the lead. Who knows? But I like the Red Raiders to advance too here also. All right, the 4 versus 13, Joe. Alabama versus Hofstra. A lot of off the court stuff happening with Alabama right now. Looks like Aiden Holloway will not be available for the game against Speedy Claxton and Cruz Davis and the Hofstra Pride. Um, Obviously, the news changes things a lot. Do you think Alabama has enough to get over the hump anyway?
I think they do. I think Nate Oates is still one of the more impressive coaches in the country. I know a lot of people like to get into the Twitter wars, but this is a guy, Sean. He came up in the back with Buffalo. I think he knows the underdog mindset. That's certainly what landed him this Alabama job due to Buffalo's emergence as a program, not only with him, but with Coach Bobby Hurley as well. So I don't think Alabama overlooks this game. And frankly, I think they take it a lot more seriously with Aiden Holloway being out. I don't know how long that lingers. I think, maybe we'll know more on Friday when we're recapping this game or previewing the other games. But if that does make an impact, I don't think it'll necessarily show up in a major way in this round.
Yeah, they still have LeBaron Philon Jr. He is still the best player probably in this region, I'd say.
Mhm.
Maybe Yaxel. I mean, Yaxel's like the only person that I think with top and out. Maybe Jefferson on Iowa State, but Philon's in the top three players in this region. I think that is enough to overcome Hofstra. But Joe, the Pride do have two amazing players, Cruz Davis and Preston Edmeade. Um, they both are incredibly efficient offensively. There are some like other players with some decent experience here. Um, you've got a couple of players who have played for Speedy Claxton for a couple of years. I do think that this is the only truthful pod where I could see two upsets happening, like both happening. I don't know.
Wow.
I don't think either of them will, but there's a chance Akron and Hofstra can meet in the round of 32, but I don't think so. I think Alabama has enough. Clearly, there's been a lot of distractions off the court off the court. But Joe, that's not something that's all that new to them. They've had it over the years. So I think Nate Oates will know how to prepare his players mentally. Um, there was something far more serious a couple of years ago with Brandon Miller and another teammate. So if they could get through that, I think they can get through this. Um, so I think Alabama will go through. It's going to be really, really tough to pick somebody to get to the Sweet 16 out of this pod because both of the favorites have personnel limitations, and then the two lower seeds are lower seeds. So I think this could have a little bit of chaos here.
Absolutely, Sean. This 6-11 game, again, we don't know the Tennessee Volunteers and Coach Rick Barnes versus uh, potentially a Miami, Ohio. Uh, Frankly, Sean, I think Rick Barnes gets this rep, and probably he's earned it in the worst way possible of the guy who always gets upset. I just don't see it happening here. Um, I don't see Miami of Ohio or SMU, most likely SMU, getting to this game uh, with great rest. And they do have to go from Dayton, Ohio, I believe, to
Buffalo, I think, or
Buffalo.
Philly.
Yeah,
Philly, one of the two.
Philly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I'm gonna pick Tennessee here. I actually think, spoiler alert, I am gonna be picking them pretty far in this region. I'm not necessarily the biggest believer in Virginia the few times I've watched them, including the Duke game. But I do think Virginia will have enough if we go down to beat Wright State. I don't see that happening. I don't think Wright State is someone who lives in the Horizon League area with both Oakland University and Detroit. I don't think they were necessarily the most impressive Horizon League team all year long,
Yeah, they
and I
weren't.
don't see and I don't see Virginia falling trapped to that again. And I think the old, oh, Tony Bennett, blah blah blah, that's the old era. This is the new era.
In terms of Tennessee, Joe, they have Nate Ament and Jacoby Gillespie. If you remember him from Maryland last year, Belmont before that, those are the two best players probably in this pod. I do like them to beat the winner of the 11 game. I think the matchup for Miami, Joe, and by the time this comes out, that game will probably be over. But it's not the worst matchup for Miami. I give them probably like a 30% chance of winning that game. Meanwhile, if they were matched up against the other two teams in the first four, it's probably below 20 to 15. But look, the SMU's dealing with some personnel issues too. If they get through that game, they're going to be one day of rest against Tennessee, who isn't like the most crisp team. They're physically big and strong, and um that's just not a good formula. In terms of Virginia, Ryan Odom has been incredibly successful there in year one. I really like the way that they play. They have a couple of really good guards. They have Dallin Hall, the BYU transfer. They have another Malik Thomas, different spelling, different person than the Arkansas Malik Thomas. And they have Ty Steritter, a Belgian freshman who is 6'10", who can shoot it. So I like Virginia to make some noise here and to do some damage, not just in the round of 64. And then this final pod, Joe. Kentucky, BBN going up against Herb Sendek and Santa Clara. Um, I don't know what I really don't know what to expect here. It's the WCC question that we had with Gonzaga in the other video. How good are these WCC teams actually? They looked good against the lower teams in their league. They had some impressive performances against each other, but are you giving the Broncos any chance here to potentially upset Kentucky?
I think Vegas is. I am not personally. I think Otoga Owe and Denzel Aberdeen will do just enough for Kentucky to squeak by this round. I don't think this is necessarily screams blowout, but I do think Kentucky is significantly more talented, significantly more experienced. I think outside of um, Malachi Moreno. This is a team that's played plenty of NCAA tournament games, certainly plenty of high major games, and I don't think necessarily that this game's going to be very intimidating for them. And spoiler alert, like Tennessee, I think the SEC was a little undervalued this year. I think it's actually not a bad league, contrary to what a lot of people in the industry think. So might pick Kentucky as a 7-2 upset too. I'm high on the Wildcats in this tournament due to their talent. And I think Mark Pope gets too much flack for being a bad coach. He's not a bad coach.
They Kentucky, I think, will have too much for Santa Clara. Even if, like,
Mhm.
let's say Santa Clara's winning like 37-31 at halftime, there are other options for Mark Pope to go to. I don't know if, like, maybe I think Herb Sendek's a better coach. How about that? Like, if it becomes a pure chess piece game where Sendek is always a step ahead and Pope is adjusting and then Sendek's readjusting and all that, like, that is the way that I think that Santa Clara wins. It's holding serve at like up 6-10 the whole game. Kentucky has had a couple of like really good second half resurgences. So even if they're down by, let's say, 13 at halftime, they have turned around a couple games against better teams than Santa Clara. Now, they've also gotten blown out a couple times because they haven't started well. But if Kentucky can start well, I think they're going to have a really good chance to win this game because I do think their size and speed will wear down Santa Clara at least a little bit. There are a few round of 64 matchups that I'm really looking forward to, Joe. This is certainly one of them because, like you said, I think there's a chance that Kentucky can go on a run here. But on the other hand, there is a real chance that they bow out in the round of 64, too. probably the team that I think has the biggest range of outcomes in this tournament. How about that? Kentucky. I think
Yeah,
I think there's a way that they can, find themselves in an Elite Eight, and if somebody else takes out Michigan, maybe Final Four. Like there is at least a small possibility there, and like I said, there's a chance they can get bounced out early. In terms of the 215 Iowa State, I do really like how TJ Otzelberger and the Cyclones play. It's energy, it's passion on defense. Now, the offense isn't the prettiest, and if Milan Momcilovic is not shooting the ball well, um, they haven't been so great, but turns out he's like 49% on the season. So that's not a good bet to make if you're Tennessee State or if you're the winner of Kentucky and Santa Clara. If you try and let him beat you, he's gonna. Um,
yeah,
in terms of Tennessee State, Nolan Smith, the Duke legend, is the coach there. Happy for him. First time in about 30 years, Joe, that they've made the tournament. So happy for him. And I do have a feeling that he will not be there for very long. He's an up and comer in the coaching ranks. But Joe, unless you got anything else, this is where our Midwest region breakdown will come to an end.
yep. Just check out our other videos is the only thing I'd say. And I think Friday night or Saturday, at least Saturday morning, we'll have something out recapping this round and previewing the others.
All right, well, thank you everybody for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.